Hello, Kwazwai, Makadini. Shokuchinga Midzai, Tsika Lounge. We want to welcome you to Tsika Lounge. We are now on series 4. On Tsika Lounge, we celebrate footprints, footsteps, landmarks, people who are doing something that promotes our culture, something that is unusual, something that we did not expect, but it's doing something magical in the media, in the world, impacting lives, either in Zimbabwe or all over the globe. So today I'm so excited to have a young man with us in the studio whose footprints are that of a young man, and I'm really honored to have him. He will introduce himself and he will talk to us.
Thank you so much, Auntie Mimi.
Welcome.
Such a great pleasure to be on Tsika Lounge.
Thank you. It's really lovely to finally meet you for the first time.
Yes, but it doesn't feel like we're meeting for the first time.
I know, we've worked together for years. So 2 years now, we've been working together online.
Yes.
The power of social media. So we have Plot Mhako with us in Tsika Lounge. He's one of Zimbabwe's leading blogger. He is into creative arts. He is into graphics. He promotes artists. His handwriting, his comments, they are very respected in the media world. And he also is one of the most talked about and written about person in our media. The title that usually goes around, the plot thickens.
Yes. Never thought it stops thickening. There's always a plot happening somewhere.
So plot is usually in the interview seat, but today you are the interviewee. And I want to know about Plot. Who is Plot Mhako? Plot akavipi, akazvarirwepi. Ndiani Plot?
Wow. I was born in Shamba, Madziwa.
Right.
And I spent, pretty much a lot of my childhood in Shamba. But when I started going to school, then it was Glenview. But every school holiday we were in Shamba. So I grew up between Glenview and Shamba. So I have a rural background as well as an urban background combined together. And I was born to a family of 9 siblings. And I'm the 5th, I'm in the middle. And my mother is still around, but my father is now dead. And yeah, that's kind of about me. And
You have sisters?
I have sisters, yes. I have 5 sisters and 3 brothers.
Right. So, Plot, if I was talking to a musician, they would tell me, Auntie, I used to sing in the bathroom when I was a child and things like that. How did you find yourself ending up in the arts industry?
Well, I think I grew up surrounded by music. None of my relatives were artists. Yes, I had an uncle who had an interest in arts, but I think it was the different interests that people around me had. So somebody listening to gospel music. So if you ask me about gospel music, especially from the old school, I have a very deep knowledge of gospel music. And my mother was also listening to country music.
Right.
And my sister. So I can be in a conversation talking about Dolly Parton, Kenny Rogers, and John Denver, and all the other artists from country music. And my sisters were listening to R&B soul, My brother was listening to mainly hip-hop, dancehall, and reggae. And my uncles were listening to roots reggae. So there was just music right around me. Different tastes, different opinions, and getting exposed to this, and also seeing a lot of artists in the neighborhood, in the community. I grew up just a stone throw away from King Alfred's house.
Right.
So, seeing them as youngsters, they were, playing around with teens, doing some drama, and later on some system, and that sort of fed my imagination. And when I went to secondary education, I did my Form 1 to Form 4 in Glenora, Glenora 2I. I would pass through Simon Chibetu neighborhood, in Glenora. And even if I was no longer living there, there was still his presence. He was coming to do rehearsals in Glenora. And there were other artists that were close by, that were always in the neighborhood, that I got exposed to. And that fascinated me. But I think my biggest fascination was radio, hearing the sound from radio, seeing a picture on TV. So I was always the one who would break things because I wanted to know what makes these things function.
Right.
I wanted to be behind the scenes. I wanted to be the storyteller. I started reading newspapers that my father would bring home at a very tender age. So getting the interest to read the newspapers when my peers were playing, I think made me a storyteller amongst my peers. And this is where everything started. So in my secondary education, I then in Form 2, I was part of a band, Form 1, Form 2, I was part of a band with 2 friends, and we even recorded some music.
Right.
I was playing keyboards then, but I was the weakest link. I was not talented, and it didn't take so long for me to realize that I'm not a creative in that sense, but I'm a creative in the sense of appreciating art, and this is what has occupied me. When I had the chance to work for the biggest festival in Zimbabwe, Haifa, in 1999, as a volunteer, by chance. And when I worked there, it transformed my thought process because I saw dance, I saw theater, I saw music, I saw things that I'd never seen on one stage. From then, the plot thickened.
So do you think these things were speaking to you? Why is it that they were coming to life? Because I think I lived in a neighborhood where Thomas Mapfumo and Buya Stella Chiweshe, and we used to just point at the house and pass through, but it never really fascinated us to think more about it.
For me, I think it's now making sense now when I look back, because some of the things that I was doing then, for example, getting into a band, it was a rebellion against family values.
Right.
Music, being in a band, making music was looked down upon. My father wanted me to be an academic. He wanted me to study and do something proper. My mother also the same. But somehow my mother supported my idea and my interest to get into the media. So she paid my school fees for my media studies
Right.
the first year. So I think all of these things were somehow predestined. This is how I look at it now. Because I can't explain certain incidences. Because I meet certain people and I get to know about certain people that I've met so many years ago. And having met these people so many years ago, and now connecting to the future, it gets more fascinating to say, oh, this is where it was all coming to, this is where it was all getting to. So for example, when I went to work at Haifa, it was the head boy and the head, I was just a prefect, it was the head boy and the head girl who were chosen to be volunteers at the festival. But my friend who was the head boy knew that I love music, so I said, you may be interested in this. But also, I didn't have enough money to pay for my school fees, my exam fees. And so what then happened is, I got this opportunity, he said, come through. And I went there for the interview, I got it. And it was also a rebellion against my pastor. Yes. So, but then I was going to a church where I was not allowed to watch TV. Right. So I went for a year and a half, I'm not watching TV. I went where I'm not listening to radio, right, because of the church where I was going to. And deciding to go to Haifa, which he regarded as Rumashave, like festivals are, he had his own interpretation. It was rebellion. So I think rebelling against such then strengthened my resolve to say, this is what I want to do. If I can rebel against this to pursue something that I love, then I think this is my calling.
That's what I need to do. Isn't it funny that religion at one point was removing a lot of things from the arts industry? Like if you went to church, Mbira would not be allowed. So many things were not allowed back then. There were so many do's and don'ts, but now it's all been embraced. You can see even the gospel artists, sometimes their beat is traditional. But isn't it funny that we've come that way where sometimes we're not even allowed to watch TV?
I think some denominations still don't allow people to watch TV, especially the one where I used to go. They still don't watch TV up to now.
Yeah.
So I think there is a lot of extremism that comes in when people try to create their own doctrine out of the doctrine, and then they create their own laws. And for example, if you look at the guitar, it's played in all spaces, in secular spaces. People play the guitar in rock and roll music. They play the guitar, they play the keyboards, right? And for somebody to say, "Oh, the mirror is dead, but the guitar is clean," then it becomes a person of an issue of self-hate, not appreciating ourselves.
Yeah.
Right. Yes, there was a purpose. There are purposes where this instrument is used for this, but possibly the same with the other instrument. The same possibly with the choral instrument or with the piano. They can use it also for meditation and other things. So, yeah, I think there's a bit of a double standard there.
Yeah, so I want to walk your journey with you. I want to come to dance. Somewhere then you were involved in dance. There were dance groups that you were part and parcel of. What was that about? How then did you come from just listening to music? Now we are having...
So, 2002 to 2004, I studied my journalism. But during that time, I was already working. So at first, I worked partly at one supermarket, and then I went to work for the Central Bank, a subsidiary of RBZ, for 5 years. And in 2004, before I left, before I started this project, there had been a film on TV called You Got Saved. This was a dance film. And I saw young people dancing, spinning, doing things that I never imagined could be real, right? It was a Steve Harvey, there was Nick Cannon, I think it's Steve Harvey. And then after watching that film, it stayed in my head for the longest time. Then I was going to work. And I then happened to see youngsters within my neighborhood who were inspired by this very same film, who were now starting to dance.
Right.
I asked one of the youngsters, "Why are you dancing? What's the purpose? Like, what do you hope to achieve?" They're like, "Maybe one day there will be a competition in Zimbabwe."
Right.
And I was like, "Oh, okay, who's organizing?" They said, "No, there's none, but maybe someday." And then that was the seed. So in 2007, I decided to create Chilika Dance Festival. Brought in 40 dance groups from all over the country. Did a festival, a 7-hour theater, which left me broke. It almost broke my spirit because I didn't make money out of it. I'd sold. It was interesting because when I was coming here, I then remembered that the last time I was here was in 2007, right? And this was around the same time that I'd sold a half-built house to start this initiative.
Right.
And then I quit my job to start that dance project. So since 2007 until now, I've been promoting dance. I've worked with a lot of dancers, a lot of artists that have passed through. And through that platform, it was not only dance. This is the platform that gave some of the stars in the country their first time to perform ever.
Right.
Yes, artists like Ja Preza, giving them their first ever opportunity to perform. It was this platform. So I started seeing more opportunities. Oh, it's dance, but it's also attracting musicians. It's also attracting other artists that are not just dancers. And this is how it started to evolve.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I thought was remarkable was that the curtain behind all these initiatives were in a community that looks down on things like music. Music had a lot of stigma.
True.
Dancing, kuti mwana ari kuti ndikunotamba, I mean, come on now. But you saw something that made you create this festival. And in so doing, we started to change our own history, started to have our own dancers who are interpreting our music and our presentations in our own way. Were there other groups that were similar to the initiative that you were doing in Zimbabwe at that time?
There was one competition that started around the same time called Undisputed. And then there were groups. This was at a time when we had Vitkas, Mambokas, and I incorporated some of the dancers in the dance groups into this festival.
Right.
But a lot of the dancers were coming from Lawa, so we had to bus them from Lawa coming to Harare.
Right.
And it took us from 2007 until 2015, this when we did the festival in Lawa for the first time.
Wow.
But all the years, the groups were coming from Lawa, they were winning the competitions, but the dance period for me where I was really focusing on dance. Opened so many doors for me. Gave me my first flight, to Europe, also within Africa. So it started opening doors, started opening opportunities, just working around dance. And it didn't stop there. 2019, before COVID, we did another dance festival, Mafue Dance, International Festival of Dance, which became the first international contemporary dance festival, standalone in Zimbabwe.
Right.
Yes. So my heart still beats for dance. I still love dance, but right now, I'm deep into music.
You're deep into music. There was something you talked about when there was a dance group, or I don't know whether it was a music group or dance group, that then caught the attention of the Olympic representatives, and somehow the project then didn't go ahead. Do you think you are comfortable to talk about that?
Yes. Yes, then it took me a lot of time for me to get to a point where I'm able to talk about this, because this was one of the maybe 3 or 2 moments where I almost quit to do anything that had to do with the arts. So in 2007, 8, 9, we were doing Jiblika Dance Festival. But in 2009, we then decided to introduce a new competition. So the economy got bad in Zimbabwe in 2008. I left for South Africa briefly because I incurred a lot of debts. People were nagging me, but I was in the midst of preparing for a competition. And whilst there, seeking a bit of refuge, I then came across a magazine. And no, it was not I watched a program, TV program, right? And I saw somebody talking about Battle of the Year dance competition, it's international breakdance competition. I was like, okay. I wrote to them, and then they responded. They connected me to the German organizers of this competition. And I came back to Zimbabwe. I did our Jiblika Festival. The following year, I said, we're buying a license for this. We bought a license, we did the competition. It was a major highlight. A lot of people had their attention drawn by this, including the church. So one of the groups that was participating was coming from a church. And when they didn't come first, and we didn't have all the resources, but they came to me and said, look, we could mobilize the resources that you need, but possibly make a bigger group, and then incorporate some of our kids. They would love to be part of this. And I thought it was a good idea, which was at first. So we incorporated them in and took those less privileged kids who were talented, more talented, into that group, traveled to Cape Town. That was my first time traveling. And also these kids, first time, most of them traveling. We did the competition, and then we got an opportunity to be part of the World Cup opening performances, right? After our intended performance there. And then when that happened, we came back to Zimbabwe, and then issues started. So the church that supported us assumed that this was their opportunity. They wanted to be the major handlers for this. This was where trouble started. So we had a misunderstanding over that. They started communicating with the organizers. We raised an alarm with the National Arts Council, with the press, but to no avail. Ultimately, the organizers of South Africa lost interest in us because we were already fighting before the opportunity.
Yeah.
So we lost it, but the church managed to organize an alternative performance. So they took the group to another performance in South Africa to make up for that. And yeah, that's what happened.
Wow. I don't know whether you see what is happening when you are bringing young people together. You are taking them off the streets. Like nowadays we see how drug is a challenge. Some of the reason why our young people end up involved in these things, they have nothing to do. But when they involve themselves in initiatives like this, where you're getting your first opportunity to leave the country, cross the border and go and see another country, these are like great opportunities. But after having been involved in such a project, then things fell through like that. What would you say to someone who's going through disappointment? What would you say about disappointment when you are doing a project?
I think every disappointment is an opportunity.
Right.
I'll tell you, for instance, this year we were nominated for the NAMA Awards. And this is something that I thought, I took it for, I was like, this is for granted, we're going to win this number one. And we didn't get it, right? And when we didn't get it, I felt disappointed. But at the same time, it made me reflect that it's not always about me, especially if it's competitive. But what can only make me better is if I improve my work.
Right.
And from then, that became an incentive that made me work. The same as with this incident. Losing that opportunity in South Africa made me work further. I didn't stop working, so I worked more. At first, it's out of the feeling to try and prove something, but later on, if you're focused, it then becomes something that is coming from within. The inner drive, it's like disappointment can be that mystic that we are waiting for, where you feel like, oh, okay, so this has happened, but what's next? Should I give in? Should I sit back and say, oh, this has happened? Or should I put up another fight and work extra now and be better and do things even better? So to anybody who feels disappointed, especially now with the drugs that are happening in the situation, I think beneath that disappointment, if you get calm, you see that lies a big opportunity. Because that energy that you use when you're disappointed, if you flip it, that energy is amazing. This is, I think, the energy that can propel you to another level. Wow,
that's interesting. That is interesting. Now we want to come back to your blogging. I think it is safe for me to say you're one of the biggest bloggers in Zimbabwe.
Thank you so much.
What is even blogging, Plot? This blogging thing never existed in our culture. What is this blogging?
I only got to know what blogging was through a couple of colleagues in the industry who were blogging, and I didn't understand what they were talking about. So there was one lady, there's Larry Quirine, 3 men on board, and there's Michael Shoko. They were blogging before I knew what blogging was. It was Zimbabwe, they were blogging. I didn't understand, but I then started blogging before I could really comprehend what it was.
Right.
And it only became clear to me that what I was doing was blogging when people started calling me a blogger. You know?
Right.
Because for me, I was like, look, I'm a trained journalist. I'm writing. I'm commenting on issues that interest me.
Right.
And I'm doing this on a micro blogging platform. You know, it's social media, Facebook, Twitter, and I'm just commenting, consistently talking about things. But when some of these things started to come to pass, when some of these things started to get quoted in different media articles, and that's when I realized, oh, so I'm blogging. So I think blogging is basically the art of writing or commenting through different media platforms about specific topic or issues of interest. And to be a blogger, you don't necessarily need to be a journalist. But if you're a journalist or if you have journalistic skills, you have a leverage because you understand the ethics. Because there are ethics in the industry. It's a very thin line. You can blog because blogging is a lot to do with your personal thought. It's an opinion that you are sharing. But that opinion can also be molded around facts, which gives it, a plus.
Right. So you know how our African culture, they tend to put like, I don't know whether we say, sometimes when we have like Jah Praiser, he is invincible in our eyes. And if someone says something negative, then people are saying you are a hater or something like that. How do you then remain neutral and you are not forced to go to give comments that please people? Because if you say something positive about the most liked person, those people that like that person, they will say you have said the right thing. But what if their project is not good? Like if maybe they are really not good, how do you then refrain from falling into pressure to comment what is not true?
I think it's a tricky situation, but for me, what has built my brand in the work that I do is integrity. And I know it's a thin line, being credible, and where people know that what you're doing, you separate your emotions from what you are talking about. You are thoughtful. You have sort of a profound understanding of things, and also to earn the respect of the readers, the artists, their fans, and comrades also within the industry. They'll be watching, they'll be seeing what's happening. And this is a very thin line. Why I call it a thin line is because it's the moment you go wrong, you cannot redeem yourself.
We were talking about your credibility, because I think people respect your comments, but I want to know how you refrain yourself from then not commenting things that people would then say you've said the right thing and they'll follow you and they will like you, but actually what you're commenting on may not necessarily be true. How do you maintain that credibility or integrity?
It's not an easy thing to do, because remember, I'm not based in Zimbabwe, but pretty much I'm talking about what's happening with the creative space in Zimbabwe. And I'm not friends with everyone in this space, right? So to get stories, to get information, to be able to comment about certain topics, certain issues, it comes also with a bit of weight. There are artists that in Zimbabwe are regarded as untouchable. And I've tried the most not to have any sacred animals within the creative space.
Right.
Not because I've ill intentions, but to be able to critique objectively. So objectivity is one of the most important things. But when talking about factual things that have happened, to be able to verify that information, so that we don't run with false information and information that actually damages the image or reputation of anyone. Because you cannot, if you defame someone, then there are legal consequences, but also it's just not good. So my approach is mainly from a very informed perspective. If I'm not informed about a specific topic, I'd rather not talk about it.
Right.
Or I speak to people that understand and say, hey, you know what, I'm talking about gospel music. Can I understand this and that? Because I've made comments that people have made bad interpretations of. Some even got offended because of comments that I've made. Right? So for example, I mean, if you talk about Winky D, you're going to get a whole army of people after you. And they will troll you until your platform is down. So if you talk about Jah Praiser, you may get also possibly the equivalent, right? Or if you talk about our socialites, the influencers, then they'll go live and they'll talk about you day in, day out. So, and then they'll have a legion of their fans also coming after you. But can we exist in that space with a lot of fear? No. How do we navigate it? Through objectivity. Earning the respect of them as creators, because they need also a bit of that feedback. But also earning respect from their fans, that they know that if we talk about something, it's from a very informed perspective. But the struggle is real. I try to verify, because information is flying around. People want to be the first with the story. But I always take a back seat. I would rather not run with the story until I've verified. And I use journalistic skills now to verify if the information is credible or not. Even to the extent of calling authorities, if it has to concern maybe police or something, and verify, yes, this happened, what's the comment, what's the situation? Because if you run with a false story, and then people are not going to trust your next story. They know that you have the capability of running false stories because you want to get likes, and there's a lot of stories that we've had to ignore that possibly could have given us more following and more likes. Simply because for us it doesn't align with our editorial policy, or we feel that it doesn't do good to the person that we're talking about.
Right. I like what you're saying, because I've taken things, defamation, that information that I might give might be defamation, to defaming the person that I'm talking about, and verifying information, that information is accurate. And I think, sadly in our in the media world of our people, we are not people that like negative comments, not necessarily negative, a criticism, let's say criticism. I find that with criticism, it helps you to build, but it's not, unless if you understand criticism, it's not something that's very common with our people. They quickly get defensive, they start being very protective. But it's interesting what you've just said about, So I want to go to ofearGROUND. It's a social platform on social media?
Yes. It's a media company.
It's a media company. So what led you to think, okay, now I want to have a media portal that I'm going to be running?
So living in Germany for a while made me homesick. And I missed home to the extent that I needed to hear an alternative story. And I could see that these alternative stories were not being told by the mainstream media. There was a void, there was a vacuum, right? A lot of the stories that we're hearing were basically around the same artists, the same stories, and I felt like, oh, okay, there are some stuff that is happening in the past about our legendary artists that has never been told.
Right.
So for us to move forward, I want to focus on new artists, new talent, but I need to do that with a very strong sense of what are our roots like. So I should be able to talk about Holy Ten, but also be able to relate with Mukadota.
Right.
You know, and connect and realize that now we have comic pastor, but there was Mtoro Wafanza.
Right.
Right. How do I not compare, but how do I build my narrative for the next when I don't know the past? So ear ground was basically keeping my ear on the ground.
Right.
Right. And I thought it was going to be a long word, long phrase. So to make it simple, I was like, let me remove everything in between and shorten the distance and say ear ground, one word. This word, Google search it, you don't find it anywhere else. Then it became a unique term. So I thought, okay, I'm going to keep my ear to the ground, amplify new voices. Let's do it. So when I started the project, the thought then was an online radio, which I then tried. Like I did a trial for a month or 2 months, But then I realized there was no one listening. There would be 2-3 more of my friends there, I say, I'm live now, and I wasn't a broadcaster before, I wasn't a speaker before, I was very shy, I was very quiet, and not even being able to speak in front of a camera. I would cry, I would struggle, I would stutter, right?
Right.
So I had to face my challenges as a communicator because I was like, okay, I'm good at writing, but not in front of a camera. So I started exploring alternative ways of expressing and getting this message, and I realized that people are now consuming a lot of audio, visual content. They want to see videos. They want to see on Facebook, on YouTube. And there was not so much that was happening, right? There were platforms that were there, right? Zimbabwe Live was doing it. ZimDI TV, which is now Slide Media TV, was already broadcasting. And I also saw that because Zimbabwe had stringent media conditions, to even get a license to do a radio to just have a media house, how can I create something that would work in that space without the struggle of licensing and stuff? And I realized they're still behind in terms of technology. They still don't understand or have not put in place measures that impede broadcasting when it comes to digital. So I was like, there's an opportunity. And then I started posting consistently about music. But there were no followers, right? There were no followers. No one was following the platform. There were 10, 15, 20, 30 people. I would celebrate every time I would get like 5 followers in a single week.
Right.
Right. But what changed our story was the consistency. We remained consistent, talking about artists that were not known. We were not focusing on the mainstream artists. Right. So it could have been easy if we were talking about Japresa, because his fans would just come on the platform, or Wingity. But we started off talking about people that were not known. But when these people became stars, that changed our narrative.
Right.
I'll give credit to Mambo Dutere, right? So when I stumbled upon his music on YouTube and talked about it consistently, to a point that I started irritating some people talking about this guy.
Yeah.
And within 2 months, I managed to make a connection between Mambo Dutere and Japresa.
Right.
And when Sisakeze dropped. And this guy's life changed. And it became a national sensation. Yeah. Right? And colleagues were like, it was a matter of luck. They didn't believe that our work had worked. And then a year later with Obechari, the same. Right? Then it became a national star. 10 months after releasing Mebo, we managed to push it within 3 weeks and it became a national hit. Radio was vibing to it. So I realized that, radio is not paying attention. Newspapers are not paying attention.
Right.
TV is not paying attention. So we may have 2,000 people following earGROUND, but if we have got the ears of those that have bigger speakers, such as radio, such as TV, then we don't have to worry. This is our amplifier. And then came on board Auntiey Mimiey. I've got my book. I want to do a book reading. Would you consider it? That was actually our first contract.
Really?
First opportunity. And getting that confidence to do a book reading with reading culture was too low in the country, was getting low, and doing this consistently and starting to see the viewership growing and people having confidence in what we're doing, seeing that there were people that were waiting for alternatives, were like, oh, what if you talk about stone sculptures? What if you talk about theatre? What if you talk about... Then we realized, let's continue talking about the creative arts. This is where our narrative revolves around, and that's where we are.
I think you are doing a great job on ofearGROUND, and yes, I sold lots of books from your portal. Wow. I was telling my family, I said, you have to meet Plot Mhako, because I sold the Tete book series. After each book reading, orders were coming, and I was surprised. America, Australia, Canada, South Africa, Dubai, it was like the world just became accessible. So I think you are doing a really exceptional job, and it is the way you are doing it differently, that you are promoting culture, you are promoting our own people. We are seeing the filtering in of international artists, Nigeria, South Africa, I saw Makazi. So this is interesting. But in our culture, if your son said he's going to be commenting about music, he's going to be promoting dancers, it's not making sense, you know, for an African parent. That, like, did you face any challenges, or your family just understood it?
So for me, it was like a hobby. It was like me occupying my pastime. So I had to fulfill other duties with my family, and also work and school, right? So every free time, I would use it now to go live, talk to an artist, go live and just do reviews and share different content. And also I learned in the process. But I think COVID then gave the best, not the best, like the biggest break.
Yeah.
Because people locked inside and they didn't know what to do, right? And the world was in a state of, depression. And everyone was looking for an outlet, looking for entertainment. And that's when we started developing more content during the COVID pandemic. This one we had also a lot of more interviews, interaction with people, because we're using the virtual connection to connect with people wherever they are. And yes, there's always a lot of resistance. You spend a lot of time on your computer, you spend a lot of time doing this and that, and then, in Europe, you cannot just sit, you have to pay bills, you have to make money. And if you're not, it creates problems. So there was a bit of resistance, but the feedback that was coming from people is what mattered. Because I remember when we did, I think that was our biggest interview. Before he became a national sensation, Passion Java, we had the interview first with him, right? And this interview, within a week, it had 100,000 views on YouTube. And that was the moment where I got convinced that what we're doing mattered. People were paying attention, right? But we didn't want to go that route where we are swept away by sensationalism and so forth. We wanted to remain objective. So it was a bit of a struggle. And how do you make money being objective? Which is a difficult thing, especially in Zimbabwe, in the media. To make money being objective, no, people prepared to pay for the alternative. They want that sensationalism, right? Though corporates will tell you we don't touch if you're very sensational, but consumers want that. But we said, look, we have all the negative stories everywhere. People are toxic everywhere. We cannot be spreading that.
Right.
Let's spread the positive word. Let's look for something interesting. Let's celebrate the positive stories. And through those stories now, this is how we've built the traction.
Wow. We want to go to graphics, Plot Mhako. Your graphics are amazing, whether it's a flyer, whether it's your ofearGROUND logo, when your programs come, like what you can turn one picture into something magical.
Thank you so much.
Like, how do you do that? Well, did you go to school to do that? What happened?
So I didn't go to school to do that. There was a time when it was really difficult for me, so I didn't have like a proper job. But I was trying to do this Jiblika project, and the person who was doing flyers for us was costing a lot of money. And we needed a lot of these flyers. So I started playing around with some design softwares, and got a friend to just show me how to do some basic things. And then I got my first consultancy job with the Marketers Association of Zimbabwe, where I worked then for 4 years as a consultant, right? And I did magazines, I did so many things. They didn't know that I was actually a rookie. They thought I knew what I was doing.
Right.
I went in with confidence, saying, I know this. So now building that collection of books and understanding how things are done helped me understand how to do like still graphics, books, catalogs, and so forth. But when it came to video, when COVID struck, I didn't know even how to cut a video into from 5 minutes to 1 minute. I had no idea. But then I said, I'm home, I have internet, why don't I spend time learning on YouTube? So I would say most of the things that I do now, visual, I've learned them from YouTube. Even how to stream, I was like, oh, Slide Media TV is streaming live. How are they doing it? You know, and they've got, you know, lower thirds, they've got all these beautiful things. How are they doing it? Something just broke out like now, breaking news. For me, that fascination to see what industry leaders were doing, for me, that was like, I need to research. If they're doing it, it's possible. And I researched, I found out it's done. And I started learning. That's how I've managed to master.
Wow. What an inspiring journey of this young man. You know, like sometimes when you are born from the background where we are coming from, sometimes you are predisposed to maybe disappointments, but you have taken strides to change your destiny. You have impacted communities around you. You have taken young people off the streets. You have created platforms, booking people to go on gigs as dancers. Some are prominent dancers now. You have promoted so many artists. Then I have seen sometimes there's controversy. Maybe if I just quickly talk about the controversy that then surrounds the work that you do sometimes. I think there was, it's called Zinara, what is it called? Zimura. I saw the controversy. How can you stay neutral and not politicize the work that you do?
Once it gets neutral and then it stops being interesting, for me, I will not function. Everything that we do is political in nature.
Right.
You know, from a music perspective, even when you say this artist is good, they may be good, but the moment we're talking about them, there is a lot of canvassing for support. There is, you're sort of advancing their cause, you know. Why are you not talking about the other million artists? All these artists, 50 artists are good. Why are you speaking about this specific artist? So you'd find there's politics, but the politics has to be above just petty, personal politics within the music and entertainment industry. So it's difficult because I do a lot of advocacy within my work. So I at one time I spoke about the contract to do with Nash TV, and it became a major thing, right? But then it brought positive results.
Right.
It changed. Nash TV changed their contract in response to that. Right. The media was alert. Artists were alert about their contract. They need to work on this, and I'm good with international tariffs. You know, so such level of advocacy to some people, it would have come through as, oh, I'm attacking Nash TV. But Nash TV did not see it like that. They saw it like, oh, we're being enlightened on this, oh, we need to fix this. And they did fix it. So my language, my selection of language, my tone, and the way I do it is what distinguishes between being objective and just being... exactly. So I've spoken about Zemura consistently. I still talk about them. You know, and I have my personal sentiments with regard to their work. But they've paid attention. I've been on radio with them and have a debate. You know, so continuous engagement for me is what matters. I talk about radio and where radio is lacking, not because I'm doing the best, not because I'm the alpha and omega, or I'm the main, like people have to listen to me. No, people also talk about my work. And when they do, I listen.
Right.
I pay attention. People have said, oh, they don't like this, or they think this and that. if you see now, I'm not as loud as I used to be, right?
Right.
Not because I don't have an opinion, but I realize that at times some of these artists, they're trying so hard. So whenever we see what they bring out, they've gone so much struggle to get there. So if people regard you as influential in some way and you beat them down, you crush them to the extent that they feel really down. I remember talking to Baba Harari one time. He said to me, one time he dropped a song and I had a negative review on it. And he felt beat down. He was really discouraged. And it took him so much time to get over it because he felt like, oh, everybody else's comment didn't matter, but he felt my comment for him mattered somehow. So it comes with that responsibility to say, what do I say?
Right.
So now at times when I see something not so good, but not worth really talking about, I don't talk about it. Or I make an effort to reach out to somebody. Or I talk about that which I think is good, and then people say, oh, this is the standard. Oh, we've seen Better Boys show good standards. Oh, so we need to up our standards and also do that without really trashing the other artists.
This is really good. So in terms of the future, what's the future for Plot Mhako? What's in your bag? What's coming up?
Wow. I think my future is getting more clearer now, but I think I get restless. When I think, okay, now this is it, ideas keep sparking and I get bored. I get easily bored. So if I do one project, I don't want to be doing the same thing over and over again. So I did Jubilee for like 13, 14 years. I'm still active, I'm still involved. But for me, it's not something that wakes me up every morning. ofearGROUND does. But in the next 5 years, will ofearGROUND be doing the same? No, I've got a bigger project, big ideas that I'm pursuing. So now what's next is the Amplify Festival, which we're doing, which is an offshoot from what we've been doing at Jubilee. But I'm also looking at a conference for Africa, CXB, which is an ambitious project, but we've already laid out the roadmap for it. A conference that will bring together creators within the African continent and also the international community to converse about how we can build a sustainable creative ecosystem for the continent, because we've got untapped stories, untapped talent, and so much that if given the right kind of mindset and direction within, because we're always looking outside. If we look from within, we can actually do something amazing. So that's why I'm seeing
it. Where does this all come from? Because this is like big dreams. What happens? How? Where do you get this?
It's the ability to imagine, and where I get my ability to imagine is all I need in my life is a glimpse. I need to just see just this and the hem of your dress for me to imagine what other dress can I make.
Right.
So I don't need to see the whole picture. So now living in Europe, just attending an event, I'm not just enjoying the music, I'm already looking what are they doing.
Right.
And how can it be done better.
Right.
So the desire to see Zimbabwe do better and emerge from being considered as the dark continent to what we are now because of Afrobeat, because of Amapiano, which are cultures that were developed by young people coming from poor backgrounds, gives me sort of that drive to say, if I have a chance to be able to drive the narrative in a certain way, I should be able to tell a beautiful story. So any opportunity, just like now from this interview, right, looking at the production team and the guys that they have, I already have ideas because I've been content with the small. But now I'm saying, oh, okay, things can actually function like this. They can be proper lighting like this. They can be, which improves because when I've been watching, say, productions, say, from Slide Media TV, I would be wondering, why do they have better lighting than I do?
Right.
Not out of envy, but out of admiration, right? But then when you get now in front of the camera and you see like, okay, I'm on interview, but I'm right? The next thing is like, where do I get this kind of lighting?
Right.
So for me, it's just the desire to see better and also complement each other. This is why I'm not shy to say who inspired me, who inspires me, who has done better, who is doing better than me. Because tomorrow there's going to be a younger blogger who's far better than me, who's
Right.
more in touch with the reality, to the extent that I'll be going to school in the next year.
Yeah.
So if I don't do it well, that young person will not have respect over me because they think I was closing the door for them.
Right. We missed out to talk about the Kombi project. The Kombi project was one of those projects that really I found them to be very, very inspiring, because I saw you again reaching out to young people, giving people hope. I do not know how you get it, but because what we discuss here will go far, I will not make more comments other than to say I have seen you empowering communities. Empowering communities. What have you got to say about the Kombi project?
Well, so for me, the Kombi is one of the most, like the best projects that I've ever thought, right? And the Kombi was born out of realizing the role that Kombis were playing in distributing music and
Right.
curating culture in Zimbabwe. Street lingo would move through the Kombis. The Windies were the ones that were inventing what kind of language that people would use on the street, right? And the driver, and they were the ones that were the DJs. Zimdance was born out of the Kombis, right? Before radio could accept that music, which they considered substandard, the Kombis were playing it. And I would listen to a whole album. I remember going to Mavuka at one time, listening to Sugar's album, right? And I didn't know who this artist was, but by the time that I got to Mavuku, the song Myros was playing in my head like continuously, right? And the next thing I had to look out for his album, and I bought the CD, right? So looking at that role and saying, we're going to Mzansi to South Africa, and we're sitting on a bus and for hours, and there was a TV playing videos, we're listening to music, right? And this is the music that would then the next day be looking for. So these people have been cultural curators, more than just drivers and conductors, right? As loud as people thought they were or they had been, they also had some positive contribution. But now COVID came, the government banned Kombis. So I came back, there's a struggle with transport. Music is now on the low, there are no hit songs. People are struggling to really come to terms which is the hit song. And the Kombis are not there. And people are on lockdown. And I have a van which I've been using for Jibilika. I then mounted my cameras, my microphones and everything, and did one single try with my nephew. I said, you act out as a Zimdancehall artist. Let's record something for 3 minutes. And we did that try at home. We put it online with a disclaimer, you know what, this is like we're just playing around. The reaction was mind-blowing. It was the conviction that I needed. So that validation made me then say, we need to do the competition. So the next thing, we went around 5 provinces, spoke to at least 240 artists. Young artists that were hungry to get a chance to be heard. Some that blocked the way for us to leave because they needed a chance to be on the competition. So, and it's not over, because now we have a corporate endorsement company that is partnered with the competition. So the next season of the competition, we'll have a corporate sponsor. Why? Because they saw the value.
Wow. Wow. We are building blogs, building culture, archiving history. We are doing so much. Plot, where do you get the time to do this? How do you balance this?
It's a difficult balance, because I get obsessed when something is exciting and then I'm so much deep into it. But I think I always give time to my family. You know, my kids, I always try to give them time. And I have a bit of a sleeping problem. I don't sleep so long. So because I stay up very late, the 3 hours that I wake from maybe 11 p.m. until 2 a.m., I can do work that then people see during the day. Right. So when I'm moving around, like I was coming here, and I remembered that there has been a story around this spot around Daniko, you know, before Mavuku, you know, where people say there was a ghost that was seen there. Yes. And it hit my mind, and I stopped. I took a picture. That's content for a day. But when somebody is passing by in a Kombi, they don't see content there. They may just say, oh, this place. Right. So I already have a story, and when you put up that story online, you've got 100,000 people that have heard the same story, that want to engage, that want to say something. Yes. So this is where I get the time. So at times I'm just functioning in my normal life, and I get the stories.
Wow. I'm really honored to have you on Tsika Lounge.
Thank you so much.
As a mother, I look to you and I see that just by looking at what you are doing, you empower young men as well. Because sometimes our African boys, they don't have that those many role models. But as you are doing this, you're role modeling that actually you can do something. So I've learned a lot. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I cannot believe you are sitting here in on Tsika Lounge. So, but we are just gonna go informal, and I'm gonna ask you informal questions,
Right.
and we just would need you to answer them. Which one is your favorite football team?
Well, I'm still learning the rules of the game, like when is halftime, and what happens when people get a free kick and a red card. So I've not really understood soccer.
Really?
So I'm not much of a soccer fan.
Oh my
Only when the
goodness.
national team is playing, for the sake of not being left out in the conversations,
Uh-huh.
and then I'm there trying to pick which are the names they're mentioning. Oh, okay. And then I can just drop a name.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'm not into sport.
Favorite artist?
Favorite artist, current or all time?
Okay. Favorite all time and favorite current.
Favorite all time is Oliver Mtukudzi.
Wow.
Yeah, for me he's a legend. And I also take pride that I come from Maziwa.
Right.
And
Right.
I come from Maziwa, so yeah.
And the current one?
Well, when it comes to the current, I love Ferdinand.
I know.
She is amazing. I like her music. I see her as someone that is going to go far. My hope is that she realizes and she knows that. But Ferdinand, for me, I do listen to other music, but right now I can listen to Ferdinand in any stop.
Yeah.
And her music speaks to my soul. Her music is you can vibe to it, but at the same time you get a lot of message and meaning from it, and she's a natural talent.
I think I discovered Ferdinand on ofearGROUND as well. Yeah, like being in the diaspora, I've learned a lot about what's happening on the ground on your portal. So it's been a pleasure having you here. I don't know if there's anything else you want to say before we finish our interview.
I just want to commend you for the work that you've been doing, amazing work, because I've known so many people through you. I've worked with so many people through you, some that have become very close friends. And also just to see this shift, because we grew up, with an industry, especially media, that is more dominated. Yes, I mean, you'd find some women, but now we start to see women like you, women like my Samba, women like Tudor, who have done amazingly well for the music, for the media in Zimbabwe, but also not just the media. These are our aunties,
Yeah.
just like Auntie Mimi. We don't see our aunties anymore now, or so often. But when we need that counsel and advice, we can watch Tsika Lounge. We can sit back and watch KVG, or watch Miss Vikendi, or Tudor Moyo, And for us, that speaks volumes. It's the role of being a mother to the society that I think our society right now needs, especially with this diaspora movement, where some families have been broken and some families have lost their loved ones because of COVID, because of HIV and other things. We follow conversations online because we have people who have taken the responsibility within the society to say we need to have informed conversations and continue to guide our society in a positive way that taps into our culture and our heritage, Tsikaze.
Thank you so much.
You're most
Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining us. We had Plot Mhako with us. We always see her behind the screens, but today we have on our platform and we've learned quite a lot. This is a rich conversation. I would advise you, if you are an artist, take time to listen, catch up. If you've got a son, let them listen to another young man who is doing something different. We are in days where life is so scary, because our sons and our daughters are getting involved in things that we do not understand. Some of them we'd never heard of them before, but we are seeing them building a new culture that is so dangerous. But we want role models, people like Plot Mhako, who are doing something in our communities. We wish him well for the next project that is coming up, that will be promoting young upcoming artists. We can't wait for his project. Thank you for joining us.